Do you need help with marketing, new clients, or online reviews? MassageBook is your solution, streamlining all the challenging aspects of your massage therapy practice. This powerful software simplifies scheduling, payments, and marketing, allowing you to focus on what you do best, helping clients live better. Plus, sign up now with code ABMP50 and get $50 off after your free 30-day trial. Visit massagebook.com, create an account, and transform your practice today. That's MassageBook with code ABMP50 for $50 off. Don't wait. Give it a shot today. Unlock exclusive 20% discounts on all Earthlight products, from portable tables and chairs to professional sheets and oils. Simply visit earthlight.com, create an account, and enter your ABMP member ID during registration. Enjoy free ground shipping on orders over $75 and stationary or electric lift tables at a $395 flat rate. A significant savings on everything you need to enhance your practice. We are proud to assist you as the world's #1 brand in massage. Earthlight.com.
Of all the joints in the human body, the jaw has got to be the best. And I mean the best. Like, it's the strongest, it's got the coolest architecture, its actions lend themselves to a heap of necessary and completely theatrical functions, and it's the only moving joint in the skull. I mean, our noses can get disjointed, but that's different. The jaw, or the temporomandibular joint as we like to call it in anatomy land, is a prime example of a joint that has a very practical purpose, but when tapped into, can bring a whole new life to its owner. It is a design for the ages. Before I get too technical, though, allow me to redirect your attention to Jim Carrey, quite possibly the owner of the coolest jaw on the planet. Granted, his facial muscles and really all of his joints also contribute to the hyper-animated quality we know and love him for, but if you take a moment to dissect his famous "alrighty then" line from Ace Ventura, you will notice his jaw moving in every single direction possible. So while the temporomandibular joint is infamous for its disorder, it is also its complexity that lends us the ability to elevate a bland statement to an iconic moment of genius. Let's back up a moment, though, and dive into how the jaw does what it does, or at least what it's supposed to do. The jaw, as I mentioned a minute ago, is the only moving joint in the skull. Not entirely, but for the most part, without getting too far down this rabbit hole, this is true. The skull is mostly comprised of 17 joints known as sutures. With the exception of when we are born, the bones and joints in the head are sturdy, bound together with tough, fibrous tissue that is unmoving and designed to protect, which is brilliant considering what's inside. The jaw is not a suture. It's a synovial joint, designed to move, and it's a typical synovial joint at that. The moving bone in this joint is the mandible. The head, or the condyle of the mandible, fits neatly into the pocket of the mandibular fossa, sometimes referred to as the glenoid fossa, not to be confused with the fossa of the same name on the scapula, of the temporal bone. It's held together with a joint capsule and some ligaments, and inside you'll find some synovial fluid, articular cartilage, and an articular disc. And while most articular cartilages in synovial joints are made up of hyaline cartilage, the disc here is composed of fibrocartilage, which means it's thicker and tougher. It's kind of like the meniscus in the knee, kind of. It's kind of like the meniscus in the knee, kind of, except it's not so much about the weight bearing as it is about the talking and chewing. This particular synovial joint falls into the subcategory of an ellipsoid joint, meaning it has two elliptical surfaces that interface to allow for a kind of gliding, slightly arced movement. It is also called a bicondylar joint. Condyles because the condylar processes of the mandible articulate with the temporal bone, and bi because there are two. Yes, true, there are two of almost all of our other joints. The difference here, though, is that these two joints on either side of your face don't have a division down the middle. It would be like if our shoulders were connected by one huge clavicle in the front and one huge scapula in the back. We might be a little more stable, but we would look seriously funny. In its most simple terms, there are two joints connecting two bones. The temporomandibular joints on either side of the face, connecting the mandible underneath, and the solidly fused cranium on top. Some even refer to these as the craniomandibular articulation, which includes both joints on both sides, as opposed to only one joint, and as opposed to possibly also referring to a dysfunction. Anatomical names, I'm just saying. Inside the joint capsule, the discs rest between the condyle of the mandible and the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone so that when we open and close our jaw, that padding prevents those bones from rubbing against each other, as padding does. The jaw doesn't just open and close, though. It can project forward, retract back, and it can also slide from side to side. And all of these actions are done with mastery by Jim Carrey. The muscles that move this joint are known as the muscles of mastication. Masticate from Greek roots, meaning to chew or to grind. There are 4 of them on either side of the face, so 8 total, and they are situated both on the outer and inner surfaces of our bones. From superficial to deep, they are the masseter, the temporalis, and then the lateral and medial pterygoids. Each of these has layers that span a wide surface at their origin and then narrow to form a stronghold on their insertion. This is a phenomenal design that creates tremendous amount of force and the ability for specified movement. 3 of them anchor into either the internal or external ramus of the mandible, or where your jawbone is closest to your neck. And the 4th, and the hardest one to access, latches itself just below the head of the mandible on the inferior surface, behind the cheekbone, very close to the joint itself. Stay with me here. Okay, so the masseter travels from the lowest aspect of the zygomatic arch, or the cheekbone, and reaches down to grab the ramus of the mandible. Its origin is wide at the top along the zygomatic arch. There are 2 divisions of the masseter, one deep and more posterior, attaching to the zygomatic process of the temporal bone, and one superficial and more anterior, attaching to the temporal process of the zygomatic bone. They then extend down to merge at the inferior external jaw. If you hold your hands to your cheek and press your teeth together, this is what you feel contracting. The temporalis is like a peacock tail fanned open. Its origin at the top is wide and connects along the flat temporal fossa of the temporal bone, and then narrows into a strong, flattish rope, dives under the zygomatic arch, and sinks itself just deep to the insertion of the masseter at the external jaw. Fun fact, the temporalis of a robust carnivorous animal like a Rottweiler or a grizzly bear have temporalises that reach all the way up to the top of their heads for all of that gnashing and chewing. If you placed your hands on your temples just above and in front of your ears, and again clench your teeth, the temporalis is what you feel firing. The next 2 muscles are not as easy to palpate. If we were to reach inside the mouth and head to the back of the jaw where a dentist might insert a needle full of Novocaine, sorry for that, this is where the pterygoids live. It gets a little prickly here because these muscles are not only harder to envision, but also have sort of confusing attachment sites. The medial pterygoid, which is the one you could palpate if you tried, has 2 heads as well, like the masseter, also attaching onto 2 different bones. The larger, deep head originates from the sphenoid bone, and the smaller head originates from the maxilla. Technically, they grab onto bony landmarks on either of these bones, but remember that the maxilla is your upper jaw, so the posterior aspect of that, and the sphenoid bone, one of my favorite bones, forms the base of the cranium and is situated behind the eyes. The cool thing about this bone is that it has wings arcing up laterally on either side, and it has 2 plates projecting inferiorly that are conveniently called the pterygoid plates. Why? Because this is where the pterygoid muscles attach, and because pterygoid means wing, like a pterodactyl. Also, if you take this bone out and hold it up by itself, it kind of looks like a moth. Last but not least, the lateral pterygoid. This one is tucked up almost directly behind your cheekbone, but like its sibling, lives on the internal surface of the jaw. It, too, has 2 heads, the superior one originating just below the wing of the sphenoid bone, and the inferior one originating on the lateral pterygoid plate. Traveling posteriorly, they then narrow and merge onto the neck of the mandible, or just below the joint itself. I encourage you to dive into these muscles and look at them from all angles if possible. There are a heap of very cool anatomy apps out there with insanely detailed perspectives. I am obsessed with mine. The big picture here is this. The two external muscles, the masseter and the temporalis, are both incredibly strong elevators of the mandible, but work against each other to project and retract the jaw, respectively. And the two internal muscles bilaterally work together to project the lower jaw, but unilaterally work together ipsilaterally to deviate the jaw from side to side. Meaning the left medial pterygoid muscle will team up with the right lateral pterygoid muscle to deviate the jaw laterally, which just takes a phenomenal amount of coordination, which explains how specialized they are at what they do, but also underscores how easy it might be for any of these moving parts to slip into dysfunction. And it's the dysfunction that most people think of when we say TMJ. So I don't want to finish this episode without paying it some attention. Consider this. The temporomandibular joint can experience pain because of three possibilities. 1, the articular disc has slid out of place. This can be the most common cause of clicking and is not always associated with pain. 2, the joint itself has become worn down or arthritic, which would make sense considering the recommended amount of times you should chew a piece of food, being 32, this times how many pieces of food are on your plate, times how much you eat in a day, times your whole life to this point. I'm not doing the math. I can't. Or 3, because the muscles trying to keep this joint closed and aligned are overused, as just noted, and have developed trigger points or myofascial inflammation. And or, of course, any combination of these 3 scenarios. This is pretty much true of most synovial joints, but because this one is situated in the head, it lends itself to some frustrating outcomes. Pain and limitations in range of motion can make the simple task of eating and talking very painful. The location of this crafty joint so close to the ear often sends radiating pain to the ear or can present as an earache. And these masterful muscles are innervated by the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve, which, if you remember, is the nerve associated with migraines. Headaches, therefore, are yet another fun bonus TMJ disorder sufferers get to enjoy. With all of this in mind, there is so much a massage therapist can do to help a client who has pain in their temporomandibular joints. No, we can't fix a disc that has slipped out of place, nor can we heal arthritis. Wouldn't we all be rich if we could? But we can help the soft tissue that surrounds it. My hope, though, is that understanding how nuanced and clever these muscles are will boost your confidence the next time you work with them, but also that you will also use your own set to their full potential the next time you utter the words, "Alrighty then."
Anatomy Trains invites you to join their flagship structural integration training now on the West Coast. Part 1 starts in San Diego, California on January 22nd, 2025. Progressively build your anatomical knowledge, hands-on manual therapy techniques, and most importantly, seeing and understanding postural patterns and developing strategies tailored to individual needs. There has never been a better time to transform your practice. Visit anatomytrains.com for details and to apply. Are you looking for a company that empowers your growth and development? Look no further than the Elements Massage brand, where all massage therapists have the opportunity to thrive through the Elements Massage Career Advancement Program. In the Elements Massage Career Advancement Program, Elements Massage Studios recognize, reward, and uplift their massage therapists, rewarding continuous learning, commitment, and growth. The Elements Massage Career Advancement Program includes professional, elite, and master levels, where massage therapists will enjoy higher commission rates, access to continuing education and development opportunities, and unique career growth opportunities to propel them toward a successful future. Evaluate your career and apply to an Elements Massage Studio today. Visit elementsmassage.com/careers and take the first step towards a fulfilling journey. That's elementsmassage.com/careers.